I do not chase the beginning. I study the end. While others rush toward the fire, I watch the wind. Because a man who always wants to strike first will never learn to see. He mistakes noise for dominance, movement for progress, and speed for wisdom. Victory is not a race. It is a revelation. And revelation comes to those who wait with discipline, not to those who sprint without clarity. Impatience is a form of fear wearing the mask of ambition. I have seen entire armies fall because their commanders wanted to be remembered as the first to charge, not the last to fall. In war, the one who strikes first often awakens the one who strikes last. And it is the second blade, forged colder, aimed sharper, timed quieter, that often decides the outcome. Let fools crave the front of the line. I build my position in the shadows. Let them run into the storm. I wait where the storm must eventually pass. I learned this from the mountains, not from men. The river does not boast about being first, and yet it reaches the ocean without fail. The tiger does not roar before the strike. It waits until silence gives way to certainty. In every war, in every conflict, I have watched those who crave the first move reveal themselves too early. They light their fires at dawn and wonder why the enemy sees them coming by midday. I have seen kings lose empires because they feared appearing slow. They sent armies before the terrain was understood. They made treaties before the enemy was revealed. They placed themselves on thrones of timing without ever understanding timing's throne. Do you understand what happens when you always want to be first? You become predictable. You become visible. You become reactive. Because the hunger to be seen clouds the ability to observe. I do not need to be seen to shape the battlefield. I do not need to be known to influence the outcome. A general who knows when not to move already commands more than the one who always moves first. I mastered silence before I mastered speech. I mastered positioning before I mastered advance. The moment you crave the first word, the first win, the first applause, you place your ego ahead of the strategy. You mistake initiation for influence. But real influence is not loud. It's quiet, unhurried, almost invisible. It is not the first hand that moves the board. It is the last hand that finishes the game. I do not say this to make you cautious. I say it to make you wise. Because wisdom and haste do not share the same shelter. If you are always rushing to be first, you will always be reacting to your own fear. When others rush into the market, I study the fear that drives them. When generals march to be first to conquer, I wait for the dust to show me their direction. And when the enemy believes they've cornered me, I show them they've only exposed themselves. You cannot win if your pride chooses your position. You cannot win if your need to be admired outruns your need to understand. And you cannot win if you mistake movement for meaning. I do not race. I calculate. I do not chase being first, because I already know where the last move will land. And that is where I will be. Waiting. Those who win without rushing understand something deeper than victory. They understand rhythm. The rhythm of war, of negotiation, of life itself. And rhythm is not found at the front of the line. It is felt in the quiet between actions, in the space where others lose patience. You can't hear rhythm if you're always shouting to be first. I have seen warriors with unmatched skill fall because they lunged too early. Not because they lacked talent, but because they lacked timing. And I have seen quieter men prevail simply because they knew when not to move. They saw the trap the early ones missed. They waited while others bragged. They struck when others were recovering. There is power in being second. There is control in letting others go first. so you may study their reach, expose their desires, and let them teach you everything without realizing it. The enemy who rushes to act gives you their map. They show you their intentions. They reveal where their pride is located, where their strategy is weakest, and where they forgot to look behind. Let others write the opening lines. You write the ending. Let them believe they are leading the dance, while you are setting the tempo from the shadows. Because to lead is not always to begin. To lead is to understand how it will end. This is not passivity. This is dominance without exposure. This is war without noise. You must learn to see being second not as a position of weakness, but as a throne of vision. When you're not first, you have the advantage of foresight. When you're not loud, you have the luxury of listening. And when you're not seen, you have the power to surprise. The enemy expects the strongest to strike first, so I become strongest by not doing what they expect. The battlefield is a mirror, and the first to act reveals what they wish to hide. I will not offer that gift. I will let them speak first, move first, swing first. And in that space, I will find my advantage. To go first is to commit. To go second is to observe. And to observe is to master. I do not train to always act. I train to recognize when to act. And when others waste strength breaking down the gate, I have already picked the lock. The strategist knows. The first strike reveals the angle. The first word reveals the bias. The first move reveals the map. If you can see what's revealed before responding, you move with superior clarity. And clarity is worth more than force. Clarity is what wins wars others never see coming. So remember, the need to be first is not strength. It is a fear of being forgotten. And fear, no matter how fast it moves, is always a weaker general than patience. Let them run. Let them roar. Let them celebrate a premature lead. Because when the fog clears, it will be me, not first, but final. And the final move is what history remembers. I do not resent those who move quickly. I study them, because those who race to the front always leave footprints behind. Their speed betrays their plan. Their urgency exposes their hunger, and hunger blinds men more than darkness. Do you know what's hidden behind the obsession with being first? Insecurity, anxiety, a desperate need to prove worth, not to the enemy, but to themselves. So they run into battle, not to conquer, but to silence doubt. And that noise within becomes louder than any command they give. I do not answer to doubt. I answer to timing. I move when the moment ripens, not because the world says it is time, but because the silence tells me so. Timing is not a clock. It is an instinct. An instinct is only sharp when sharpened in stillness. When others talk over each other to be heard, I wait. Because when the room is loud, no one is listening. But when silence falls, the one who speaks owns the room. I have watched kings destroy treaties by speaking first. I have watched traders lose fortunes by entering first. I have watched armies fall apart because the general wanted the glory of first contact. Glory is not in being first. Glory is in being right. And to be right, you must be quiet enough to see. Let others chase the light. I walk with the shadow, because that is where the real power gathers. The ones who wait are not weaker. They are watchers, and watchers become predators the moment the prey forgets they exist. If you've been told all your life that being first is winning, then hear this. Sometimes being last is the strategy that breaks the chain of every eager fool before you, because they wore themselves out to get ahead. And now they are too tired to defend the position they rushed to claim. I don't want the crown they fight over. I want the silence that comes after their fight. That is where I begin. when they think it's already over. That is when I strike. When they believe they've already won. The field clears itself. You only need to wait long enough to let noise destroy itself. This is not passive warfare. This is precision warfare, because in every storm there is a center, and I plant myself there, still, unbothered, ready. When you always need to be first, you give your control away. You become addicted to reaction. You think you're acting, but you're just running ahead of your fear. And fear, once it leads you, will betray you. I do not follow fear. I follow alignment. I follow terrain. I follow silence. Because the true master does not fear missing the moment. He knows the moment cannot begin until he arrives. Every enemy has a rhythm, and every rhythm has a pause. But if you are rushing to be first, you will miss that pause. And if you miss the pause, you will miss the weakness. I do not prepare for speed. I prepare for precision. Because the sharper the blade, the fewer swings it needs. I do not train to fight first. I train to make the only move that matters. In the art of war, there is a moment before the battle truly begins. It is invisible to the eye, but not to the prepared. The ground breathes. The air tightens. The pattern shifts. Those who strike too early miss that breath. And those who miss the breath lose the war. This world is full of men racing to be first. They launch before they listen. They post before they reflect. They buy before they understand. They speak before they think. And every one of them believes that boldness is strategy. But boldness without wisdom is a torch in the wind. It flickers before it fades. I do not need to be the brightest flame. I need to be the last. Because fire that lasts outlives the ones that flare and vanish. They will call you hesitant when you wait. Let them. They will call you slow when you withhold. Let them. They will call you unsure when you do not act with the crowd. Let them. Because the one who sees the whole board is always called strange by those who only see their own square. But the board does not reward urgency. It rewards mastery. The board does not remember who moved first. It remembers who delivered the final checkmate. In battle, the enemy often expects you to mirror them. If they rush, they expect you to rush. If they shout, they expect you to shout. But I do not mirror weakness. I absorb it. I learn from it. And I answer it with silence so calculated it becomes unbearable. Because silence, when used with timing, becomes pressure. And pressure breaks more enemies than any sword. I've stood on the battlefield with enemies inches from my line, snarling, shouting, begging for the fight to begin. And I've done nothing, because silence makes them question. And questions are heavier than arrows. Do not move to prove your strength. Move to prove your understanding. Because when you strike last, and you strike right, you don't need to strike again. There is no glory in being the first to move, but there is power in being the last to fall. And that power does not come from speed, it comes from self-command. Let others spend their energy trying to be remembered first. I spend mine ensuring I am never forgotten. I have seen the battlefield before the clash, not in visions, but in the behavior of men. The restless ones always move first. They cannot sit with uncertainty. They cannot hold tension, so they break it by charging into action without understanding the shape of the silence. But tension is not your enemy. Tension is your tool. It is the bow drawn before the arrow flies. It is the pause before the punch lands. If you let it stretch just enough, it becomes power. But if you release too soon, you waste everything. I do not walk into battles I did not define, and I do not run to flags I did not raise. There is a difference between seizing the moment and being seized by it. The undisciplined man cannot tell the difference. He moves when others move. He panics when others panic. He strikes because someone else struck first, and he believes that reacting is a form of control. But reaction is surrender disguised as engagement. He thinks he is asserting dominance, but he is only dancing to music he did not compose. I compose my own tempo. I do not let others rush me into their timeline, because speed, when it's not yours, is sabotage. Let me ask you something. Do you know how to wait? I don't mean doing nothing. I mean watching with intent, listening with focus, positioning while still. That is not inaction. That is invisibility turning into inevitability. The longer you can wait without twitching, the more the enemy reveals. They show you their tells. They show you their fear. They show you what they hope you don't notice. You can't see those things if you're sprinting to be first. Speed blinds you. Stillness reveals. When I prepare to move, I do not ask, how quickly can I act? I ask, how deeply have I understood? Because understanding is the strike. And when you strike with full understanding, you don't need force, only placement. It is a myth that you must win fast to win big. Real victory is quiet, slow, unshakable. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't crave applause. It just settles into place like a stone locking into a foundation, immovable, undeniable, permanent. So when they mock your slowness, thank them. When they try to provoke your speed, disappoint them. Because in time, the same ones who laughed at your pace will bow to your position. And by then, you won't need to explain anything, because the war will already be over. And you'll still be standing. Let them take the spotlight. Let them claim the first kill, the first word, the first flame. Because I do not measure strength by order of appearance. I measure it by who is left when the noise fades. And often, the one who stood back, steady, observant, unrushed, is the one still standing when the dust settles. Do not mistake restraint for hesitation. Do not mistake calm for weakness. A lion crouching is not backing down, he is preparing. And in preparation lies precision, and in precision lies power. I have studied the ones who fall, not just their weapons, but their decisions. The hurried strike, the unmeasured risk, the unplanned advance. Their graves are not marked by failure, they are marked by impatience, because they could not bear to be second, because they thought movement alone was meaning. But I know this, every great battle is won, not by the one who moves first, but by the one who sees first. Sees the pattern, sees the pressure points, sees the terrain not as a map, but as a living strategy. The impatient man cannot see. He is too busy proving, too busy chasing, too busy broadcasting a strength he hasn't yet earned, and so he becomes loud, fast, and easy to read. But I do not broadcast. I build, quietly, consistently, from the ground up, not for attention, but for accuracy. Let others swing wildly in the name of speed. Let them wear themselves out with urgency. They will look powerful, briefly, but power without patience is a storm without direction. It destroys what it touches, but then disappears. I am not a storm. I am the change in air pressure before the storm arrives, the stillness that makes generals nervous, the delay that makes the enemy doubt themselves, because delay, when chosen, becomes strategy, and strategy, when rooted in restraint, becomes a weapon sharper than any sword. I do not enter battles to be seen. I enter them to decide, and those who decide the end are the only ones who truly win. So I wait, not because I lack the strength, but because I do not waste it. I do not light every match. I save the fire for the moment that matters. And when I strike, the world will not remember whether I was first. It will remember that I was final. You must learn to endure the pressure of waiting without surrendering to the temptation of haste, because that pressure will break most men before the battle even begins. They will move just to feel in control. They will act just to escape the weight of silence. But silence is not your enemy. It is your proving ground. If you cannot remain still when the world screams, "Move," you will never move with precision when it counts. And if you cannot resist the impulse to be first, you will always be led, even when you think you are leading. True leadership is not found in the first step. It is found in the step taken at the right moment, after every other path has revealed itself. I have led armies by moving second and still claimed victory with the quietest command. Because once everyone else reveals their hand, all that's left is to choose the card that ends the game. Do not confuse action with control. You can act and still be lost. You can act and still be baited. You can act and still be falling directly into the enemy's plan. But when you wait and watch, you shift from being a piece on the board to the hand that moves the pieces. That is where I operate. Not as a pawn in the rush to win the moment, but as the strategist who shapes the long arc of victory. In markets, in politics, in conflict, in life, everyone wants to be first. The first to speak, the first to release, the first to take credit. But the first often exposes themselves before the outcome is ready. Let them run out ahead. Let them burn their advantage in the spotlight, because the one who waits with wisdom will always have the cleanest shot. I have made men unravel simply by standing still, because nothing disturbs the insecure more than someone who does not rush to match their pace. They panic. They overreach. They misread your silence as weakness and step forward too far. And that's where I win. Not by overwhelming them, not by outrunning them, but by making space for them to destroy themselves. That is the gift of restraint. So when you feel the fire to be first, ask yourself, what do I gain by moving now? What do I lose by revealing myself too early? And what will I see if I stay still just a little longer? You may find the real answer is not in being first, but in being the only one left who hasn't wasted their strength. I have outlived many enemies, not because I was stronger, not because I was faster, but because I was willing to stand behind the noise while they ran toward it. They craved the illusion of winning. I waited for the substance of it. The longer you can delay without flinching, the more the world unfolds in front of you. Your opponents get louder, their patterns become clearer, and your path, the quiet one, becomes undeniable. I do not teach slowness. I teach timing. And timing is not about waiting forever. It is about knowing exactly when not to act. That sliver of pause others fear, that's where the real power lives. Because once you no longer fear being behind, you are free to act ahead. You cannot win if you're always seeking to be first, because the desire to be first puts your decisions in chains. You begin to react to what others might think. You abandon the terrain. You neglect the silence. You strike before your sword has fully drawn. That is not warfare. That is desperation. And desperation dies loudly. But if you can master the stillness, if you can hear the noise and not answer it, if you can feel the pull to act and not obey it, then you are no longer just a fighter. You are the storm that watches the storm. Let them laugh at your patience. Let them question your pace. Let them underestimate the one who stays seated when everyone else is already running. Because when the moment truly arrives, they will be too spent to respond. And you will not need to hurry. You will simply rise. The world remembers the bold, but it obeys the precise. And precision comes not from being first, but from being right. I do not celebrate early moves. I celebrate the final position, the one that cannot be undone, the one that silences every voice that once mocked your delay. This is how I win, not through noise, not through speed, but through restraint so complete it becomes a weapon sharper than any sword. You can't win if you always want to be first, because first is not where victory lives. Victory lives where no one was looking, in the quiet corners, in the well-timed breath, in the patience that broke the enemy long before the blade ever did. And that is where I remain, not first, but final, unshaken, unmatched, unforgotten.